watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message.
So last week, we kicked off our series, Rebuild, where we're looking at how do we take our faith and honestly break it down completely. I mean, get out the sledgehammers, the jackhammer, knock down some walls, get renovation moving, drop it to the ground, and start building it back up from the beginning. And we ended our week last week looking at, if we follow God, that grace is our megaphone. That everything that we live, move, and breathe will be out of that fact that when people are hurtful, when people are wrong, when people are unloving, we will show grace. And as we drilled down a little deeper, what we landed at was that, if you're going to follow Jesus, you're not going to be like a life coach, you're going to be more like a lifeguard. That we would be people that jump into the deep end. You see, a life coach would just say, oh, you're hurting, I'm going to throw this ring at you, and you just kind of figure it out on your own. But if we're going to follow Jesus, that we would be people that go, you know what, I'm going to post up, I'm going to be there for you, I'm going to be around what's going on, and I'm going to be someone who is in the thick of it with you no matter what. Our family has spent a lot of time around the beach and water, pools and whatnot this summer. And, whether it's going out to Croatan Beach and just hanging out and the lifeguards get there eventually, or we spend a lot of time at Ocean Breeze. Now, if you've ever spent any time at that place, you know that there's days where it's like, yay, and then there's other days where it's like, it's a little bit of what hell might be like one day. Like, it's a little bonkers. But one of the things that we've noticed is, and I will say this for the lifeguards that are there, they do a phenomenal job jumping in when things get difficult, when things get hard, when things are just feeling like, you're watching a kid and they're doing whatever, and they tell people there's a little kid that was running as they came in. I blew my whistle. I'm like, quit running, just because it's a lifeguard thing and it's fun. But they do that. They're making sure every safety thing is covered. And our family has become really connected to people saving our children. And we've been thankful for the ones who jump in when it's hard, especially for our daughter, Roxy, because there have been two different times, one of which, Jess, who is singing, her husband, we're at a baptism where we're at a friend's pool and we're getting ready to baptize a handful of people. And so what am I doing? I'm getting ready. I'm setting up the camera. We're doing a thing, talking everybody through stuff. And as I get down to set up the camera, all I hear is, and then I see her husband, Ken, throw his phone into the bushes and jump in. And I'm like, why is he jumping into the pool? That seems weird. He's jumping in because my daughter's at the very bottom of the pool and doesn't know how to swim at this time. This is a few years back. You see, she had wanted to go get a ball. And she saw it on the edge there, and she got down, and my wife is watching, but if you have kids, and so don't shame people on social media when a kid did whatever, and where was the parent? My wife was just a few feet away, but just like that, a kid could do something. She reaches down to get it, goes over the ball, sinks head first all the way down. And I wasn't even near close to be able to help her. If he hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened. You see, when people are there in the right time, in the right place, it changes everything. Fast forward a couple of years later, we're at Croatan Beach. We're baptizing some more people. There's a theme here. We're trying to help save people's souls, and we're also trying to save my daughter from drowning. You see, we had just gotten done baptizing a handful of people at the beach, and it's windy. It's pretty rough that day, and we're all standing around in a big circle praying. Well, what's my daughter Roxy doing? She's running out. She wants to be in the water. Why? Because she's a kid. And so she's in the water doing whatever, and we're praying, but she's right there on the edge, and I kind of look up, and then I keep praying. The next thing I know, our adult ministries pastor, Dan Pollard, is yanking her out of the water because a wave has come up over her, and he's saving her little life yet again. And there's been these moments where I go, man, there's something to be said for people being there at the right place at the right time when people need them. And I think for you and I, what solidifies our lives in Jesus, whether you're brand new with us or you've been with us for a while, I'm thankful that you're here. And if you're brand new, I want to preface this message today by saying that you are studying, training, sitting and watching what it means to one day be a follower of Jesus, Christ-like, and be a spiritual lifeguard. To look at others' lives, to help them, to guide them along, but to be there in the moment. But if you are a Christian this morning, for the next 24 minutes that we have left together, my hope is that you and I would go, you know what? I am sitting in one of two places. Am I either, and I wrote this down because I want to make sure that I get this right for us, are you saving or solidifying people's faith? If you follow Jesus, are you saving people from the desperation that they're in? Or by your neglect or lack of action, are you solidifying their faith in not being able to follow Jesus and not be with him when this existence ends? And we've been in this series looking at Proverbs, and if you have a Bible, I'd love for you to turn over to Proverbs chapter 4. If you don't have a Bible, we give them away for free in the lobby at the Get Connected table. There's absolutely no catch, and so don't think like, oh, I get a Bible, but I got to fill out my information. No, pick up a Bible, it's free. Or you can go to forefrontchurch.info, and when you go over there, you could swipe a couple times, click the notes section. Everything that we talk about today will be right there for you. You see, when we look at this, are we saving or solidifying someone's faith? Over in Proverbs chapter 4, it's in the Old Testament of the Bible, we look at, and we'll be in verse 18 in just a moment. You see, there is a stark contrast between someone who follows Jesus and someone who doesn't. Now, if you're sitting here this morning, you go, I don't follow Jesus, what does that mean for me? I want to let you know a couple things. One, that God loves you, that God cares for you, that God made you unique, and he wants more for you, maybe even than you want for yourself. You see, there are moments when I walk through my life and I would go to church and I would hear the difference between the two and I go, oh, they're just talking down to me. I want to let you know that this is for you, that we have people in this church, but we hold Christians, people who say they love Jesus, we hold them accountable because we can't say we're a Christian unless we actually act Christ-like. And so over in this section, in verse 18 and 19, it kind of paints this picture for us. It says, the path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. If you've ever sat and you have the blackout blinds, but you forgot to put them all the way down, and then that little itty bit of light gets through and you're like, oh dear Lord. Like you just want to sleep. And you ever, like our daughter sleeps with no blinds closed. So a moment that the light creaks through, I like go past her room and it's like going out like you're a vampire. Just like it is so bright walking past there. But that if you follow Jesus, you would forever shine brighter and brighter in your life. But the way of the wicked, the ones who choose defiantly to say, I don't want to follow God. I don't want anything with this. And what I love is that if we're sitting here this morning, we don't want that. Whether you're close to God or you're still searching, you are choosing to explore something different than what you've always done. Is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. You see, more often than not, we have these moments where we just don't know the things that we, don't know. It was in 1996 when we talk about this saving idea that Hurricane Bertha came through. How many of you guys remember that from you were around here? Yeah. So some of you, I asked Brandon, our creative arts pastor, earlier. I was like, that was 96. How old are you? He was like 2 or 3. I was like, oh. And so we talk, and I always feel old, but then I talk to Dan and Becky, our older staff members, and then I feel better about myself. And so I was explaining this hurricane that came through. It didn't do a ton of damage, but one of the things that if you grow up around beach culture and surf culture that is fantastic is that when a big storm comes through, especially when it stays off the coast, you have a great opportunity to catch some amazing surf that's here. And so we went out, and it was the biggest surf that I to this day have ever been in. It was about a little bit overhead. It was about 1 foot or 2 feet overhead, which when they say it's about head-high surf, it's roughly about 6 feet. So a couple feet overhead. We were in sometimes between 8 to 10 foot surf, depending on, and these are 8 to 10 foot waves that were billowing through. It was amazing. So we ride our bikes down to Croatan, and we're there. And it was so much fun. And I remember that, my dad and brother and a bunch of us, we were all down there, but it was big. And so you kind of get the pep talk from everybody like, hey, don't do this. And we had gone out there plenty of times. And so we go out and we're bodyboarding that day. And something about bodyboarding, especially if you're going to lean into a wave, you want to make sure, and even with surfing, that you don't catch the rail wrong on the face of the wave. And when these waves are coming up and they're doing this, now if you flow with the wave, it's absolutely wonderful. It's one of the most beautiful things to be able to get out there and ride the creation of God and to harness it and do it. There's no feeling like it. But when you lean in to the face of a wave, and then especially there's a move that you could do on a bodyboard called drop knee, where you'd have one knee on the board and you'd put another knee up with your fin up, and you can control the board with your front foot and kind of carve through the wave. Well, a buddy of mine, and we were out there, and one of the good things is our dad was very adamant that we learn how to swim, and that we would, parents, you learn how to swim, and then be able to learn from other people about being in the ocean, rip currents, whatnot. Well, we drop in, and my buddy and I drop into the same wave, which is a little bit of a no-no, but it was big, and we were having fun. And so we drop in. It was actually supposed to be mine, but whatever, I'm not bitter. And so we drop in, but I watch him and trust me, I fell a lot that day, but it's water and it's not that bad. But he fell and went in, and he tilted his rail wrong, and I watched as his leash snapped. And so his board goes flying. This is big surf. We're out pretty far, and I see that his leash is going, but now I don't want to paint the picture that like he was dying. I don't think that was the case at all. But he was definitely, if you've ever gotten hit by a wave and you tumble, it is very difficult to know which way is up. And so he's kind of I see his board go the other way. I see his leash. And so I see that he's not immediately coming back up. And so I, on my board, kind of grab the leash after the wave has kind of come past, and I yank it. I'm yanking on his leash so he can come up, and he's like, whoa, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that was tough. And we go get his board and do whatever. We get back to the beach. And one of the first things he said, he was like, man, in no uncertain words, he basically shared, I failed at that, man. That was awful. And I explained to him, actually, no, it wasn't. That was a win, bro. And he's like, I don't know what kind of wins you're thinking about, but that did not feel anything remotely like a win. And I was like, no, as we're talking through, I was like, you learned how to not do that. And I bet you when we paddle back out, you're never going to do that again. He's like, oh, no, not at all. I was like, that is a victory for you. And I think far too often when we hit these moments where we go, I want to be someone who helps save people's lives, not solidify their fate by non-action, by the poor choices that I make. The moment that we fail, we feel like it's over. And I write these notes down to myself all the time, and I wrote this down about failure. It's not a failure if you don't fail at doing something you're not supposed to do. For instance, my friend, it's a victory because with each success, with each so-called failure, you're getting a clearer sense of your calling. That each time that you and I go, I want to live a life Christ-like, looking like Jesus, that saves people. Now, let me pause and say this. None of us actually do the saving. It is only by the grace and beauty of Jesus that we ever get a second chance at this life. But Jesus chose to use us as catalysts for change in people's lives. So we can't subvert our own action and go, well, Jesus does the same and I'm just going to hang out. No, he calls everyone. That's why we say we're Christian, Christ-like, to live by example so that other people would go, there's something about you. And when we start those failure moments, we have to be able to go, all right, how do I dial it back to be able to not just be a life coach and just throw people a ring in life, but that I would really be someone who is seen. Because the beauty about a lifeguard is there is no question about who's the lifeguard. You can walk into any pool, any water park, any beach, and you go, there's a lifeguard right there. And now there may be people that by the time they didn't put on sunscreen, they look like a lifeguard because they are red as can be. It's a totally different story. But when you walk onto the scene, you know exactly who it is. And could that be said of your life and mine? That people see you and they go, wow, you absolutely live what you say. I love the way that John Mark Comer, he talks about how do we mold ourselves into this. And he shares it this way. When we talk about our mind and our heart and winning in victory over those things, he says every thought in your mind needs to be filtered. If you're going to survive this war, you need to be domineering, controlling, micromanaging tyrant when it comes to your thought life. Any and all thoughts outside of God's word, you take captive, shut up, and expel. If you give those thoughts no time, no mental real estate, no free pass, you throw those thoughts into prison, no better yet, you send them straight to solitary confinement, and when you're done, you throw away the keys. You see, you and I, the fact that we're here says, sheerly by our presence, that there is an inkling of you and I wanting to make a difference. But simply arriving, sitting, and watching does not make us Christ-like. Now, it will refine us if we're open to it. It will change us if we're receiving it and putting it into practice. But there's a key element of this proverb, as the writer writes, that absolutely changes you and I so that we're not just simply life coaches throwing people a ring and good little verses on Facebook and doing those things, but that we are diving into the muck, the dirtiness, the depth of people's lives. Because we know where God found us. He found us much like he found my daughter. God didn't find us and kind of repair us. He found us drowning at the bottom and sent Jesus to bring us out of the depths, to change our heart. And so how can we guard that, to really look at that? And I love the way that passage in Proverbs continues on. It says, my son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart. Or they are life for those who find it and health for those whole body. Above all else, and this is key, guard your heart. For everything you do flows from it. If you've ever said something out loud and you go, I don't know where that came from. Yeah, you do. It's been in there all the time. It's been in your thoughts. It's been in your heart. You've been conditioned to that. You watched it. You heard it. You saw it growing up. There were enough things that were poured in. One of the notes that I have on my board in my office is that which is internal always becomes visible. And so you learn that somewhere. You condition yourself in that way. I don't know why I'm so angry. I don't know why I say the words that I do. I don't know why I act out the way that I do. Well, I know why. Because you've either been conditioned so much that that's immediately what comes out. Verse 24, keep your mouth free from perversity, from corrupt talk. Keep corrupt talk from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths of your feet and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from evil. If you want to be a lifeguard, if you want to live, if you want people to see your life. Now, I'm not talking about wearing a what would Jesus do bracelet, all right? I'm not talking about going and buying like Flava Flav size, cross and putting that around your neck. Only the people that know Public Enemy will get that. All there are people, Flava Flav, who's that? Yeah, boy. And you put a huge cross around your neck because you want people to know you love Jesus. I'm not talking about using Christianese language which doesn't do what you think it does. It only wearing the bracelets, wearing the big stuff, talking in that way doesn't help people who don't know Jesus get closer to him. All it does is create a larger divide. And so how would you and I change from being a life coach to really living a life like Jesus? Being Christ-like. You see, it has to change to this. Guarded hearts. It says, you can guard your heart above all else because everything else flows from it. Guarded hearts are prepared to help others. You show me somebody who is surrendered to God, which is a word that no guy likes at all. Surrender, I don't want that. I want a champion. I want to win. You know how you win? You win by realizing that you're not the one in control. Guarded hearts, saying, God, I want to surrender my life to you. I want to be enveloped in you. Those are the people that are prepared to help others. And if you follow Jesus, and so if you're just kind of checking this out and you're, kind of moving towards this, I'm glad you're here. But if you are following Jesus, you are either in the deep end. There's only one of two things. Either in the deep end with people, or you're off over in the cabana getting drinks. There's no in between. You may say, Jason, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. If your life is fully surrendered, if you are guarding your heart and doing that, you are changing every single piece of your life. I'm not saying you're going and, if you own a business and you're not putting like Jesus stickers all over everything, little Jesus fish, I want to let everybody know that I'm a Christian business. No, you're not going through, you're not putting big like scripture verses on your lawn and all that stuff. You are living your life differently that people would see it, and you're helping others. Or you're over at the cabana getting drinks. There's no in between. Because Jesus says, come and give all of your life to me, not a portion. Every single piece. I love the way that Tim Keller puts it. He shares it this way. He says, when we look at Jesus and we move in this, we want to live this life of being surrendered and helping others, rearranging the raw materials of God's creation in our life in such a way that it helps the world in general and people in particular thrive and flourish. How are you being intentional about helping people thrive and flourish if you say that you love Jesus? Because if you can't say it, and this is the part where we don't like to draw lines, but we also have to say that if you don't train, you don't practice, you don't do these things. We watch this in kids' sports, right? If you don't do all these things, you can't be on the team. And nobody gets mad about that. But the moment we take the most important topic of all mankind, eternal life, spiritual life or spiritual death, and then we go, I don't want to rearrange my life. I like it just the way it is. Well, that's not how Jesus felt about you and I. He said, I want to come and set you free, and so I'm going to give my life. I will be the ultimate lifeguard and give you everything so that you could be free. So you want to know what the church is? The church is you and I. It's not where we come. We could be meeting anywhere, and we've met a lot of places. We've met in schools. We've met in movie theaters. We've met in art, at the art gallery down at the ocean. We've met in open bars. The church is you and I. And this is what the church is here and will always be. And if you don't feel comfortable with this definition, I'll help you find a new church. The church is a hospital, a place where sick, broken, wounded, flawed people are made new by Jesus. That's what this is. And if you say, I love Jesus, then we will be people that don't just throw people a little raft, that we would be people that say, I will definitively and markedly live my life different so that other people see it not by what I wear, not by what I condemn, but how I love, how I show grace. They go, man, there's something different about you. I want to rebuild my life because something is different about you. You see, there's a couple things that happen if you want to live that type of life. The first one is that lifeguards fix their gaze on Jesus. Now, I'm not talking about if you watch people that are getting in swim classes and getting trained, or even watch people that are in lifeguard training. They sit and they watch. My daughters, They all went through swim classes. The older two got done, and now they're like fish. And my youngest one, she's in swim class now, and she thinks she can conquer the wave pool at Ocean Breeze. And we're like, whoa, time out. You're like this big. But it's something about watching, but not just watching. They watch everything that happens, and then they put it into what? Practice. They actually do it. I know this is an amazing concept. But people that want to live a life like Jesus actually watch the life of Jesus and then live as he lived. And so how do we do that? We can't literally watch Jesus because Jesus lived, Jesus died, Jesus conquered death so that we could be free, and he's preparing a place for us which is going to be amazing. Whatever you can dream up, it blows that out of the water. But how do we do that? Well, we do that because we pray and connect. We fix our eyes on Jesus because we don't neglect this right here. Because we get to watch people that will encourage us in ways we never imagined. We don't neglect meeting together in each other's homes. We call it small groups. Because we want to be able to connect and learn from one another in such a way that we go, you're loving Jesus differently than I have, and man, that is awesome. How can I do that? Then we open up our Bibles and we read, well, Jason, the Bible is boring. I don't know what Bible you're reading. But man, I open up the Bible and I am riveted the majority of the time. Now, there's some times where I read and I go, God, why did you include that in? But I immediately go, all right, I got to figure this out. Why did you include that in? I want to know why. But there is war, there's famine, there's destruction, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. There's plagues, there's people being raised from the dead, there's people that were blind could see, people that shouldn't have been shown grace are being shown grace. I'm like, what is going on? There's a whole chunk of the Bible that would be NC-17 if we made a movie out of it. If anybody's ever told, the Bible's just so nice. No, it is crazy. And when we fix our gaze on Jesus, things change. Our life begins to change. I have this written down on my desk at home. And this is what I live by. If you want to know what I'm about, past, V-neck t-shirts and tight jeans. Those of you guys who read Google reviews. This is it. I want to follow Jesus so intently that people around me would have no other option but to follow him too. I want my life to echo so greatly the love, mercy, and grace of Jesus that everywhere that I go, people would go, I'm atheist, but what in the world? And we're talking, yeah, but what? And they would, I think I want to follow Jesus. Because that's happened in my life. That I've met people who said, I don't believe in God. I had a friend, I don't believe in God, and I'm mad at him. I'm like, well, how can you be mad at somebody that don't exist? And they spent the next year and a half talking and sharing. Most of the time, not even about God, but about life. And that's when a friend comes to you and says, hey, I want to get baptized. I want to give my life to Jesus. Can that be said of your life, that you're fixing your gaze so tightly on him that everyone around you is drastically changing because they see your life? And not only that, the way that begins to happen, if you live that out, that people would have no other option, you know what's going to happen? Is that lifeguards set up where people need saving. I meet people, I go, hey, so who are you hanging out with? My friends from church. Awesome. Okay, cool. What are you going to do later on this week? Well, we're going to go to small group. With who? With my friends from church. Cool. What are you going to do later? Well, I don't have a whole lot going on, but then eventually I'm going to go to church on Sunday around who? Around my Christian friends. Cool. When are you around people who don't know Jesus? I don't have any friends that don't know Jesus. Well, you need some new friends. It's hard to make friends as an adult. I don't care. Go make some new friends. Use every opportunity to put yourself in places where people don't know Jesus. Now, I'm not talking about, we say this a lot, going down like people do at the oceanfront. It's standing on a soapbox with a Bible in one hand and a big sign condemning everybody in the other, and that's not really going to make friends and influence people. Actually, it will do the opposite. It'll tell them, why would I want to go to any place like that? But I will tell you that if you show up where people need saving, it'll change. But Historically, Christians have been afraid to go to places. Oh, I won't go to a bar because there's people there that do awful things. Now, if you have a propensity for abusing alcohol, you probably shouldn't be at a bar. But for some of you, you just don't go because you think you're holy. No, you're Pharisaical. It's like these religious leaders back in the day. They were called the Pharisees. They would look at other people that would do things and go, you're awful, you're bad, you're this, you're that. But then they'd turn around and do the very same thing. Sometimes we think we're so righteous and so holy that we won't go near anywhere. And it's the very places that Jesus was known to go. It's the very places that Jesus went, which is why people called Jesus a drunkard, a swindler, a liar, that he would hang around in all these places. They go, I can't believe he's a rabbi. I can't believe he would do those things. He went and set up where people needed saving and never sinned. And if we're going to be lifeguards, you can't be a lifeguard and set up in the middle of your lawn and expect anybody to get saved. You got to go to a place, if you're a lifeguard, where people are swimming and people are possibly in danger. And so that means as a Christian, you live your life on the edge. You live your life in ways that people wouldn't go, oh, I don't know if I could do that. It's not just showing up, it's actually serving others. Have somebody that goes to Forefront here that had some time where they kind of disconnected for a while. And if you want to know what it's like, this disconnection piece, I want you to hear it not in my words, but in his. Because drifting away from the church equals drifting away from Jesus. You can try to convince yourself that you are maintaining that relationship, but you're not. In my experience, the further I drifted away from the church, the less I prayed, and I had this overwhelming feeling of isolation and despair. I felt out of sync not just in my relationship with Christ, but in living day to day. I really did long for the days when I was plugged in at church, when I was living life for something beyond the material and myself. So, I started serving again at church and focused more on my relationship with Jesus and the people around me, and spent less time wallowing around in self-pity and excuses. That's usually the people at the cabana. Those isolated, out-of-sync feelings eventually were replaced with a sense of contentment and joy. And I love these last two sentences. I'm never quite as happy as when I'm living life for Christ, when I'm using my gifts that He has given me to serve the kingdom and His purpose. You want to know what it's like to be a lifeguard? I think sometimes God allows us, to a certain extent, to get a taste of, and I watch this with believers who kind of waffle on things. They go, I've wavered, I'm over here. And God doesn't go, oh, sound the alarm, whatever. He goes, I want you to follow me, but I'm going to watch, and I'm going to stay steady and consistent, and I want you to come back. I think people, for the most part, and I don't know why, it shouldn't be this way, but we almost need to have a moment where we do a little shift away. We come to Jesus, we're thriving, doing all these things, but here's what I see. The people that get really fired up are the people that take just enough step, and I'm not saying everybody needs to do this, but I just watch it happen. And they have enough people who love God and love God, love them, but love God more than them. They go, hey, where you're at, I love you, but that's really toxic. And you were a lifeguard once, and now you've been sitting at the cabana, and you've been, armchair quarterback. And you're not really engaged, and you're faltering. And they yank somebody back, and the people that get yanked back, and in the book of James it talks about this, those save someone from this behavior, double honor, this amazing thing that takes place. Yank them back to where they need to be, and it changes everything. See, my hope is that you and I will rebuild the way that we need to. And the only way that you can truly save and by save, I mean introduce people to the love, grace, and mercy of Jesus, is if you have a guarded heart. And when you guard your heart, you will be prepared to help others. And my hope, for those of you who say you follow Jesus, is that you'd actually live it. Because if you're not going to live it, stop calling yourself a Christian. because you're just giving everybody else a bad name. And you're making the work harder for those of us who want to do that, but every time we encounter somebody, go, I met this Christian that, and they fill in the blank. Oh, gosh. But I want to show you grace. I want to show you mercy too, just like Jesus did. So there's a second chance for you. And if you've never followed Jesus, you can have that second chance today. Say, I want to give my life to saving and introducing people to the Jesus that saves from sin and death. And that can happen today. Would you pray with me?
Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you, or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab, as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in, and we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.